Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, episode 426. After taking a few weeks off, uh, wasn't planned, but my schedule is hectic this time of year during the holiday season, right? So couldn't control it. After taking a few weeks off, we're back with another live episode. I'm your host, Michael. Gail will not be joining us this week. We're doing this show live on Wednesdays where she teaches class, and unfortunately, my schedules could not mesh. So, joining me for this particular episode, Daniel for Boxing News and the Inscriber. What's going on, Daniel?
Hey, folks, how's it going?
Indeed. Daniel took some time off as well. Hopefully, he's refreshed after some much needed little mini vacation over in Hawaii. Hope things all went well over there in the islands.
Yeah, but they went fairly well. Thanksgiving and then in a pretty amazing luau. I'll say that.
Indeed. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report, live YouTube um, show, podcast, blog, website, etc., talking all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we'll talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, it will get discussed. If you want to find out any and all information about Pound for Pound Box Report, the site is the place to go to. P4pboxingreport.com. If you wish to email us with any questions, thoughts, suggestions, you can do so. P4pboxing at P4pboxingreport.com. On the site, you'll find links to where to check us out, all those social media, links to the Facebook page, links to the YouTube channel, links to the pages on IG, Twitter, because I refuse to call it X, Tumblr as well. Also, if you wish to donate, got a Cash Me, PayPal donation links. If you have a little bit of spare change on hand while you getting ready to spend money for the holidays for your loved ones, we will really be thankful if you can shoot some coin our way. It wouldn't matter if it's $1, $2, $5. It'll help the overall cost and productions behind the scenes. Last but certainly not least, for those who are looking to get their body right or to keep their body right during this holiday season, there's a link to my to Body, formerly known as Beach Body On Demand, programs for any and all suitable fitness interests and goals. Whether it's the lift series, if you're looking to lift weights, there's the lift series, lift 4 and lift more. If you're looking for challenging functional workouts, there are programs like 6 weeks of the work, 645. If you're looking for a morning program, there's morning meltdown, other programs like muscle burns fat, 80-day obsession. If you're looking for a yoga-based program, they got you. If you're looking for a Pilates-based program, they got you. If you're looking for a boxing-based program, please check out 10 Rounds. That is a 6-week program. 3 days of boxing-based cardio, 2 days of weightlifting. And the programs are not that long, running anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. At the very least, please check out Body and take advantage of the free 14-day trial, which runs throughout the year. And that is for 14 days, you get free access to any and all programs on on Body, including the introductory, the sample workout for the news program that's getting ready to drop in 2024. That is Dig Deeper. And that is another weightlifting, bodybuilding type of workout program. Let's get things going, Daniel. A lot of fights, a lot of action that took place during our timeout off, but we're going to focus on what happened this particular weekend. And let's start with the big fight, and that is super middleweight showdown between David Benavidez and Demetrius Andrade. Andrade, Daniel, did well for the first 3 rounds, but in his words, in recapping the fight afterwards, size kind of mattered, right? Benavidez hurt him in round 4, and from that point on, things changed. The Mexican monster, as he calls himself, really poured on the pressure. Give credit to Andrade for showing toughness, showed a heck of a chin, but ultimately the size and the power of Benavidez was too much. Stopped him in round 6, I believe. I named this particular episode "Now is the Time." And the reason I did so, Daniel, because I've been on this thing for at least a year, questioning whether Canelo actually wants to fight Benavidez, right? In the past, he's made excuses like, oh, Benavidez, he hasn't fought the big enough fights yet. He hasn't earned the opportunity. No more excuses now. That is the fight that folks want to see. That is the fight I certainly want to see at 168 pounds. The ball is in Canelo's court, Daniel. Either he's going to take this fight or not.
It is, and unfortunately, folks got to get used to saying that it's not. Because I'll say this, because I've been scouring the web until I see a definitive statement where Canelo says, I rescind my previous statement and I will fight another Mexican. And somebody tried to come at me saying, like, oh no, Benavidez is an American. Yeah. He was born in the U.S., but people consider him Mexican and Ecuadorian, but mostly Mexican. Until Canelo says he will fight another Mexican for a world title, it's still a moot point to me. And that's really bad considering how this fight went in, because for the first 3 rounds, Andrade showed why he was lauded as he was among the hardcores. As far as his movement, as far as his hand speed, as far as trying to land combinations. He threw a pretty good amount of combinations. However, most of them did land in Benavidez's guard. And the fact of the matter is he has spent his career, for the most part, at middleweight. And David has not. In fact, David is still struggling to stay at super middleweight. He's probably better going at light heavyweight at this point. But that size matters, and not to mention the fact that Benavidez has an insane motor once he hurts you, which is what happened in that 4th round. Now, you can debate whether or not it was a shove that caused the knockdown, but the fact of the matter is that after that punch in the 4th round, after that right hand, Andrade was on clear streak. He did not function that well. All of the combinations, all the great position that he was able to do the first 3 rounds, unfortunately, were out the window. And he just became a piñata in many ways for David. Now, I applaud Andrade's corner for doing the right thing and stopping the fight. Right as referee, because either the referee was going to stop it right then and there in round 7, or they needed to. They saw he was not there. They said, no, let's stop this. Let's not hurt our fighter. And ultimately, that gives Benavidez the TKO win. Now, Canelo statements aside, has he earned the shot to call Canelo when it comes to David Benavidez? Yes, he has. Yes, he has. As far as 168 pound goes, he is the next man up. So long as he can keep making the weight. Because we have to remember, David was a pretty heavy kid growing up compared to his older brother. And it may be a struggle for him now trying to make 168. And it's going to come a point where he'll probably go up to 175. I could probably see it if he can't get the Canelo fight, which unfortunately I feel like he won't. He'll make the smart move and move up to 175, because at that point, then you can get a proxy fight with Bivol. And if you can outlast Dimitri Bivol, then you have a little bit of a poker chip that you can use maybe to force Canelo into the situation. But otherwise, between that and just all the events that led Andrade to this fight. Well, I'd still applaud him for taking it on the fight, but overall, unfortunately, it is an example of his business decisions costing him long term in the end.
He was Benavidez, I should say, was just as dominant in his win over Plant, in my opinion, as Canelo was in his win over David Plant, right? And he's just coming off of a stoppage win over the guy in Andrade that Canelo refused to fight. Let's just put it out there. He refused to fight him. Basically threw the middle finger at him and said, you never get the opportunity, right? I'm just piggybacking off of your comments about whether Benavidez has earned a fight with Canelo. You're doggone right he has. And if the fight doesn't happen, it will be, I agree with you, it will be because Canelo will not fight him. And that should be a stain and a mark on the record of Canelo, not on Benavidez. The hope here, at least my sincere hope, is that Canelo gets some act right and he fights this dude either in May or in September of 2024. Let's hope it happens. Let's move on to other fights on this card that was main event by Benavidez and Andrade. The return of Jermall Charlo. Daniel scored an easy decision win over Jose Benavidez. I thought from jump that Jose Benavidez, who's the brother of David Benavidez, Jose was, Bob Hope category, no hope. More of a natural welterweight, in my opinion, fighting at middleweight. He had no chance, and we all know it going in. The question is, afterwards, is concerning Charlo in this aspect, right? This fight was at a catch weight, was supposed to be at a catch weight of 163, but during the weigh-in, Charlo was over. Not by a small amount, by a significant amount. He weighed 166, right? I know during the lead up, he talked about wanting to defend the title at 160. If you go to 3kingsboxing.com, please check out 3kingsboxing.com, your source for pure unadulterated boxing information. Shout out to the entire 3 Kings staff and crew over there. 2K, I've said it numerous times. 2K, Bo, Bakari, Ed, who's our editor, and all the contributors behind the scenes. Charlo's even talked about wanting a unification bout with Jonathan, but given what transpired during the weigh-in and how his body looked, it's clear that this dude's future is at 168 pounds. Why is he messing around? Why is he BSing the public in this manner? And regardless of how he performed at the fight, he performed okay. If you want to talk about that, fine. But the main point here for me, Daniel, is Charlo, make an announcement you're moving up to 168 pounds.
This one was a bit disappointing to me. Not so much the performance, because we all knew what was going to happen. Like Joe Benavidez could have talked all the shit he could talk, but that wasn't going to amount to nothing when you're fighting somebody that was not that much naturally bigger than. And I think all of us have been saying it, you, me, Gail, anybody who else has jumped on, I think we've been saying it when it comes to Jermall Charlo, that it's been time that he go up to super middleweight. But I think part of it is I don't think he wants to, I don't think he wants to fight two particular people at 168. Caleb Plant, because Caleb Plant kind of embarrassed his family earlier in the year. And obviously David Benavidez, because we just saw what he did against a more skilled fighter than Jermall Charlo and Andrade. Between that hesitancy and the fact that probably the other big fight he probably wanted to get, Triple G, we all Gennady Golovkin is essentially, for all intents and purposes, all he needs to do is file the paperwork. He's effectively retired. So there's not a lot of really big fights now at 160 for him to do. And which leaves the only option being 168. Now, I have my suspicion that he's going to be the one that gets the Canelo sweepstakes, and I've had that suspicion ever since Canelo signed that 3-5 deal with PBC. And that may be a more fair battle than with Mel, because at least Maul has grown more into this weight class. But I expect similar results if that's the fight that we're gonna get in May, and I suspect that's the fight that we're gonna get in May.
It makes no sense after Plant basically shot the fair one on him, sneak punched him, slapped him in his face. Why would he and embarrass him in front of the boxing world? Why would he not want to go in there and say, okay, forget all this other stuff, make Plant my next fight? I don't understand.
That's been the question for a good while when it comes to Maul. And we have to take into account, like, it's been mental health issues that have been mostly blocking him, and we've seen that affect not only his career, we've seen him affect his family life. Him and Mel don't really get along nowadays. Like, they'll be in each other's corners when the fights come, but it's a situation of a family situation where I'll only be around in important matters. On everything else, I'll just ghost you, which feels like that's the case between them two at the moment. And that adds up over time, and you can resolve it by making the fight. And doesn't matter there's animosity. Plant and Benavidez had animosity, and they settled it in the ring. Maul has to do the same, because otherwise, that trajectory that he was on, because he looked for a while like he was going to be the more successful of the Charlo brothers, of the Charlo twins, that has fallen off. And Mel has achieved the goal that nobody else has achieved in a while, becoming undisputed at 154. Granted, chicanery took that undisputed from him, but he now has achieved more than what Maul has. And that falls on Maul on its own. You can't blame business, you can't blame being blackballed. This is mostly on you.
Other fights, let's go through this right quick. I don't know, Daniel, if Subriel Matias is the best junior welterweight in the world. Matter of fact, I don't think he is. But he's certainly the most exciting, right? Won the title earlier this year by stoppage, the vacant IBF belt. Made the first defense of that title against Grgashev. And I thought this had the opportunity to be the fight of the night, right? And in fact, Grgashev got off to an excellent start, but Matias is one of these fighters that he starts slowly, right? But once he gets the engine revving, he's like a locomotive that can't be stopped. And he like Benavidez was able to hurt Andrade to stop the momentum. Matias did the same thing in this fight, and it got to the point where he had the challenger do a no mas, right? All things considered, given the reputation of his challenger coming in, just as impressive as Benavidez's fight was against Andrade, afterwards, Matias, he called for the likes of Teofimo. He called for the winner of Haney Progress. He called for Gervonta Davis. I don't know if he even can get any of those fights. He may be viewed as high risk, low rewards, but I would love to see him in there in the ring against any of those guys. The hard hitting Matias is stating a heck of a case for himself in the junior welterweight division.
This was a fun thing to look at when you see the highlights of it, because one key part of this when it comes to Matias is he's on a kind of like Deontay Wilder streak. Not saying that the right hit, that his hands are the sleepers of Wilder, as Wilder probably still has arguably the best sleeper in the sport still. But all of his wins have been via stoppage. None of them have been, sorry folks, people moving around, but none of them have been by decision. Now, sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. It's good because it showcases that you have power in your hands and that you can finish fights. It can also be bad in the fact that your motor hasn't gone to the limit. And against some of the people that he's called out, that may be a risk. So Matias is made himself a pretty decent player. I do expect a pretty big 2024 from him. The Tank fight is probably the goal, because Tank has proven himself to be a pretty decent commodity, pretty decent attraction. And who would want a piece of that action? Or even trying to get Ryan Garcia. Same thing. Decent action. And Ryan was starting to build up until he got caught by Tank. Either way, he has a very bright future.
Indeed. Final fight on this card. I admit here I wasn't able to see the fight in full. Just highlights Lamont and Roach defeating Hector Garcia by decision to win the WBA belt at 130. Kind of feel-good story here for Roach, who's been a veteran. A lot of people remember him for his fight against Jermall Herring a few years back. Garcia coming off what many people remember, his loss to Tank Davis earlier in 2023. Overall, decent fight, knocked down in the last round by Roach, was pretty much the difference here. If you were able to see the fight, Daniel, your assessment, please.
This is the one, unfortunately, mostly caught highlights of. But from what I've seen, it was a pretty decent back and forth fight. So Roach won by split decision. And luckily, he has built himself right back up to being a player in a division. And that's a good thing, because not a lot of fighters can do that after facing the fighters that Roach has faced. So I commend him on it. And hopefully we get to see big things from him in the future.
I don't know if he's the best at one. Just like I said, I don't know if Matias is the best at 140. I don't know if he's the best at 130 pounds. Roach, and I don't even think. Personally, I just keep it a buck. I don't know if he has it in him to be a long-time champion, but he is one now. We'll see how far it goes. I know Ashaki Foster went on Twitter afterwards and mentioned that he would love to fight him in 2024. Foster coming off of a terrific win down in Mexico just a few weeks back, right? Recently signed a deal with Top Rank. Maybe that's a fight that could happen at some point in 2024. Last fight on the docket here. We're going from that card in Vegas over to Ireland, the home country of Katie Taylor. Rematch between Taylor and Chantelle Cameron. Taylor ends up getting a decision here. She gets revenge. They fought in May 20th, I believe it was. Cameron winning the decision then. To me, in hindsight, the momentum of this fight changed in the very first round. Cameron popped Taylor with a shotgun jab. On my replay in watching this, it looked like a knockdown. There were others who argued that Cameron stepped on Taylor's foot. I personally didn't see it. I think had that been ruled a knockdown, it would have changed how Taylor would have performed. Instead, she got off to more of a fast start. Cameron came on late, but it just wasn't enough. Even though I think Taylor got the right decision, what transpired in that opening round, it still sticks in my head, Daniel.
This actually was the fight we were expecting the first time. Because we have to remember what the first fight was. The first fight was almost a thorough skill domination on the part of Chantelle Cameron. But this was the fight I was expecting the first time. A good back and forth, seeing Katie try to will her way, try to land combinations, granted being fueled by an Irish crowd that pretty much cheered the fact that she could breathe in the ring. But that first sequence, yeah, that also plays a factor into it. I mentioned that when we covered Andrade that you can make a case that David didn't actually knock down Andrade in a way that he was pushed down. You can't make and it's a similar situation in this. You can make the case that Chantelle did land the punches to officially score the knockdown against Katie Taylor. But just like the situation, the decisions went the other way. And ultimately, that allowed Katie to build her momentum, to build on her landing combinations, not get caught in the ropes as much against Chantelle Cameron until later on in the round. But at that point, both women were just flat out exhausted. You could tell at that point. And it's a good comeback story for Katie Taylor because the first fight had a lot of us thinking that it may be time for her because given her age, given how late she became a pro, that we thought that, yeah, maybe this is closer to the sunset. But kind of it does show that Katie does have a little bit more spirit. I would not be surprised if we get a trilogy fight, if we have a rubber match. But personally, as much as Eddie hates it, he's probably got a call from one Mr. Jake Paul. And maybe, hopefully, at that point now, Amanda Serrano can avenge her win.
That aside, and despite her win, is Taylor, how can she say it? How can I put this? Is Taylor a fighter? Is Taylor a fighter who's getting old before her eyes?
Yeah. It's fair to make that case because, unfortunately, of how late she became a pro. That's unfortunately a sad part of it is that when it came to women's boxing, they became pro a lot later than the men, and unfortunately that has caused a shorter shelf life as far as the career goes. And we're seeing that with Katie at the moment because while her performance was great and she won that fight, this wasn't a home cooking on the part of the Irish when it came to this fight. This is a situation of you are watching her starting to be a step slower. Her response is being a second later than what you've seen beforehand. And one of the bad things is the fighting style that she has is one that is not very indicative for a long career. Because you've seen it with Amanda Serrano, she went through a war that I still feel to this day that she lost. And then the first fight with Cameron, she was third down by somebody that was fresher, that was younger, hungrier. Yeah, she won this fight and she deserved to win this fight. But at a certain point, that toll is going to wane in. And it may not be in the next year, but probably within the next 2 years, unless her management team, unless Eddie Hearn, really focus, really sit down, and don't let it become a situation like one we're seeing, unfortunately, with Cecilia Brækhus. Hopefully, they don't allow that situation to get to that point with Katie, and they let her try to finish her career on a good note, because it's coming much sooner than probably a lot of people want.
Indeed, she has more. She has a lot more. She has a lot. She doesn't have many more fights left. She got the triumphant rematch when she got her triumphant homecoming. Whether it's a third fight with Cameron, whether it's a rematch with Serrano, or whether it's maybe a fight with Caroline Dubois, who's been calling her out in the days after the win. Taylor has been one of the best fighters in women's boxing history, future Hall of Famer. But I agree with Daniel on this 100%. She's not the fighter that she was, and you hope that. Yeah, I'll just leave it like that. She's not the fighter that she once was. Let's move on to some news here. During our time off, unfortunate time off, news dropped, Daniel, was going to turn out to be a pretty, in 2023 context, pretty monstrous card that's happening over in the Middle East. This is an old school 1980s, 1990s Don King style card. The highlight, of course, is going to be Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua. They're not going to fight each other, but they're going to fight on the same card. Wilder's going to fight Joseph Parker. Joshua's fighting Otto Wallin. But you also have on this card the return of Dimitri Bivol. You got Big Baby. You got Big Baby Miller fighting Daniel Dubois. I'm trying to think. There's all Jai Opetai, who's coming off of an impressive win over Thompson over in England. He's making a quick return to the ring. He's fighting on this card as well. Philip Hrgovic is going to be fighting on this card. Too many fighters to even mention at this point. I think Frank Sanchez is fighting Junior 5. This is a card that's loaded for bear. Out of all of these fights, which match up, I should say, are you most looking forward to?
First, I'm still looking forward to this thing actually still pulling off through, because that's a lot of blood money being thrown. And yes, folks, it is blood money. But unfortunately, with the departure of Showtime, it's a necessary evil that has become. And when it comes to the combat sports world, because it's not only going to be boxing, it's going to be MMA too. They're going to get the blood money too. But I honestly want to gauge to see which fight is going to be better, because Joshua Wallin, that's an interesting matchup in the sense of the fact that you have somebody in Wallin who probably, in hindsight, should have gotten the decision over Tyson Fury. And you have him go against Joshua, who, let's face it, he's still rebuilding his career after being mentally broken by Usyk. Twice, mind you. And then there's Deontay Wilder, Joseph Parker. We have to remember, at one point, Parker was considered one of the top prospects and was a champion. He was one of the belts that Joshua collected on his way to not fighting Wilder when those two had all the belts. But that one's going to be interesting to see, because we know Joseph Parker, yeah, he not what he looked like, but he is also a fighter that is willing to bang. And because she's willing to bang, ultimately will be a fun fight to have. And it's going to definitely be a good fight to make. This card is actually going to be very, very interesting. And if I'm correct, Mike, I think this is gonna be one of those DAZN pay-per-view deals. I think this is gonna be on regular DAZN, if I'm correct.
I'm not sure. I should know, but I'm not sure. I think you're right. Of all of these fights, I agree with you. Joshua and Marlen has the potential to be the most intriguing because Marlen gave Tyson Fury one of the toughest fights of his career, right? And he hasn't lost since. Coming off of winning in a world title eliminator, he's full of confidence, and he's coming in thinking that Joshua is not the fighter that he once was. He actually said that during the introductory press conference, right? Outside of that, I'm glad that Bivol is getting back in the ring, finally fighting London Arthur. And I'm coming off of Opetaie, excuse me, and how he looked in his last performance. I was very, very impressed by his stoppage over Thompson over in England, enemy territory, right? He has the look of being a real special fighter at cruiserweight. He has the look of being a dominant champion in that division. He's young. He can box. He can punch. I like his attitude in and out of the ring. I think that's how when I look at him and I see him and I hear him in interviews, that's how I want my fighters to be in terms of how they carry themselves. Again, I think he has pound for pound potential. You don't see that in a lot of cruiserweights, but because of his ability, I think he's going to clean out that division and reign for however long as he wants. Put it this way. He has Usyk dominant potential in him. And given his height, I wouldn't be surprised in the next few years if he cleans out 200 pounds now, whatever division. Yeah, 200 pounds, I think cruiserweight is now, and make an eventual move up to heavyweight. That's how good I think he is. Outside of that, again, there's so many fights on this card. Too many to even be mentioned here. Big Baby and Dubois, I think. Say what you want about Big Baby Miller. He presses the action. He's so big and so strong, and he throws too many punches. I think he's going to be far too much for Dubois. I think he's going to stop him. But outside of that, yeah, Joshua Marlen. I think Wilder's going to knock Parker out. Other than that, the return of Bivol and Opetaie, that what has me most excited when it comes to this upcoming card. Another fight that's looked like it's going to happen, Daniel. I don't know if it's been made official. Shout out to MG is here. He asks, he put his question in here. If you haven't done so already, if you're checking us out on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. He says, "Good show, appreciate it." Do you see the news that Haney is vacating all the lightweight belts and move up to 147 after his fight with Prograis? We were going to talk about that later, but let's talk about it now. News broke, Daniel, shortly before we hit the live button, that Devin Haney is indeed moving up. Has decided to vacate all the belts that he had at 135 pounds, excuse me. And the word on the street is that should he win or even should he lose, that after this fight against Prograis in December 9th, he's contemplating moving up to welterweight. Your reaction on the breaking news regarding Devin Haney?
Oh, sorry. I just literally pulled up the ESPN article from my work computer. And it, how do I say this? I want to be kind to Haney because he did achieve something and becoming undisputed at 135. Actually becoming undisputed, not have the whole trivial franchise champion bullshit that the WBC threw. But despite his, we'll say, lackluster performance a couple weeks ago, and even with all the talk between both sides, both camps, I think we have a feeling that Devin Haney did not want any part of Shakur Stevenson at 135. And the main way to avoid it is not only to skip one division, because Shakur's getting big himself where he can move up to 140, but even jump down and go to 147. Now, that in itself can also say how hard Haney has been trying to maintain weight at 135. If you feel like your best decision is to completely now skip, regardless of what happens with Prograis, to skip 140 now altogether to go up to welterweight. That should tell you they can laud them on, they can try to say, oh, we're trying to be three division champs. No. Let's be blunt. Devin Haney has kept himself at 135 a little bit too long, and it may have affected him where he had see now 140 as an option. And 147 right now, it could be good for the taking. It would be smart for him to do it. It's a business decision. But at the end of the day, to me, it's more the fact that he would rather go to welterweight than face Shakur Stevenson.
I'm still on the fence of whether he did or did not want to face Stevenson. I mean, there was official offer there. Stevenson turned it down, right? And the offer was technically under the guidelines of what it is when it came to champion and challenger, right? I'm not gonna and the reason I'm not gonna give him too much flack is because he's fighting a Prograis who some, more than a few, argue is the best at 140 pounds. And if he indeed decides to move up to 147 and tangle with someone like a Boots Ennis, or even dare to be great and try to fight Crawford, again, I'm not going to be mad at him for that. I'm still trying to digest this because this is really late breaking. Again, this happened really literally prior to us hitting the live button. But first and foremost, he has to take care of business against Prograis, which will not be an easy feat. I think, honestly, that Regis Prograis is going to give Haney pure D hell when they fight, even though the fight is happening in Haney's hometown of San Francisco. Do not be surprised, ladies and gentlemen, if Prograis walks out the ring being the winner. What you saw from Rougarou in his last fight, that is not an indication of who he is really as a fighter. Styles make fights, and that style was all wrong for Regis Prograis. In terms of this move, Haney, interesting. And I'll just say interesting. The timing of this is interesting, and we may talk more about this next week on the show. And again, thank you, MG is here for your question. And if you have any more, please continue to chop it up in the chat. Another development that took place really during our time off, and that's concerning the ladies. Look, Daniel, the reality is that women in boxing are more likely to engage in unification bouts, champions fighting each other, right? There are reasons behind that, largely because of money, but but it's still the case. And a few weeks back, we talked about Gabriela Fundora and how impressive she was in her win to become IBF flyweight champion, right? And she's coming back right out the gate and fighting for undisputed. As news as we're on the street is that you're close to finalizing a fight between Fundora and unified flyweight champion Marlen Esparza. January 6th is the targeted date. Las Vegas is the most likely location. What do you think of this fight? The fact that it looks like we're on the verge of having a unified champion at flyweight, and that Fundora shooting for glory not too long after winning a world title. You gotta love it.
Quick question: Is Fundora in the PBC camp or in the Golden Boy camp?
Oh, good question. I'm not sure.
The main reason I asked.
Please continue on that. Let me look it up right quick while you continue on talking about this fight.
Because the main reason I asked is because I don't think this is in Vegas. I think this is San Antonio. But Virgil is having his return fight at 154 on January 6th. I think it's in San Antonio. I may be wrong. This may be Vegas. This may be the undercard fight, the co-main on this. If it isn't, and if Fundora's part of Golden Boy, that's a bold strategy. They're trying to put two high-key caliber fights on separate cards that you have to promote. That's pretty interesting, but that aside, you gotta love it. You have to love the fact that Gabriela, luckily, is learning a bit of the lessons that she saw her brother Sebastian go through, and waiting a little bit too long to try to make his or her claim to be undisputed or to be a champion. She's already got the belt, and Marlen has shown that even with all the people disagreeing, including you, Mike, that she doesn't want any parts. I think Marlen wants, even though she knows she probably will lose, she still wants a part of Senicia. Just because they don't like each other that much. And now you have this roadblock of this young kid in Gabriela Fundora that is a buzzsaw, where she not only has the height and the reach to bother you, but she has the motor to bother you. That is going to be a very fun fight, because let's face facts, Marlen's recent fights, they've been good, but they haven't been dominant. And now this is going to be a very interesting test for her, facing somebody that is hungry, just became a champion, is willing to risk it all now. Because you have to commend a fighter when it comes into that. Because some people, they get the title, they'll sit on it. And they'll just keep making mandatories until they feel that the big fight is marinating. I love what Gabriela is doing.
I believe she's promoted by Likovitz.
Okay, so she's PBC. Okay. So if she's PBC, then that means Marlen has to go to a PBC card. That makes a little bit more sense, because to me, like, Golden Boy wouldn't try to promote two high key cards with two high key matches in two different cities. But it might be a decent night for Golden Boy.
Yeah, in Esparza, she's with Golden Boy. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So this may be a Golden Boy card.
That's why I have a feeling Well, when I get home, I'm gonna clear it up. I'm gonna start looking it up. This could wind up being the card. This could wind up being the card that becomes a co-main for Virgil's card because they're fighting the same day. If it's January 6th.
Okay. Another question we have here from MG is here. Speaking of women's boxing, what's going on with Alicia Baumgardner? She tested positive for steroids and then tries to proclaim her innocence by submitting her own test. It's really weird. Yeah, that broke during our time off as well. Baumgardner kind of set this thing up on social media, said that she's having big news that's coming down the pipe. Turns out that she says she did her own individual test. There was individual testing done from her hair sample around the time that she tested positive for 2 banned substances back in the summer. Boxing fans are still skeptical. Baumgardner says this means that basically she's using this as evidence to proclaim her innocence. There's some in the boxing community who are still skeptical of that, and for the reason that MG mentioned here, basically saying she goes out and proclaims innocence by submitting a test of her own. A lot of folks in the boxing community are not buying it. Your reaction to the developments regarding undisputed 130-pound champion Alicia Baumgardner, Daniel?
This is sad. I'm sorry. This is sad. You can't go to the card, unfortunately. Okay, you've already tested for something. As far as I know, we don't really know what specific something you tested for, but you tested for something. And the lamest card that you can actually play at that point is that I made my own test. I did my own study. And I proclaim myself innocent. And there has to be somebody impartial that does the B sample with no ties to her camp. But this is unfortunately the situation she's facing into it. Now, I understand why. We all know that the payday for a rematch with Michaela Mayer, if this test holds up, the impartial test, not her self-test, if the impartial test holds up, that payday's gone. And yeah, that can frustrate a fighter, but at the end of the day, if you're innocent in many ways, you can have the system try to clear you. There are false positives out there in the world. It happens. But to do it this way, at least in my eyes, it raises more suspicion, and sometimes it may confirm that she may be in fact guilty of doping.
Possible rematch with Mayer aside. Of course, Mayer is moving up to 147 pounds. She's fighting Natasha Jonas for Jonas's IBF welterweight belt. It was an introductory press conference for that today over in England. Whenever Baumgardner decides to return to the ring, MG, she has to deal with Delphine Persoon. Persoon, who's a former champion at 130 pounds, is Baumgardner's mandatory contender across the board. And Persoon has been on record on her social media saying that in her mind, the next fight for her is a world title shot against Baumgardner. Persoon won an eliminator earlier this year. And so wherever the future is and whatever you think about this, and I kind of have I'm kind of cynical over this as well. Her next fight, MG, her next fight, Daniel, is more likely to be against Persoon. Not this proposed, not any rematch against Mayer, whatever weight. So that's in terms of in the ring, that's what's up with her. In terms of her next fight, she has to deal with Persoon. sanctioning body obligations demand that. If not, she's not going to be undisputed champion any longer. Final word on this one before we move on, Daniel.
You have to remember, folks, Pursoon is not a cakewalk by any means. So that's what's awaiting Alicia Baumgartner coming in. It may be a dose of karma that's maybe being dished out.
Yeah, because for those who hadn't seen Pursoon fight, just go on YouTube and or Daily Motion and just look up her 2 fights with Katie Taylor. Just like Serrano gave Taylor the fight of her life, so did Pursoon when they fought a few years back. And there are some in the boxing community who feel that Pursoon won that first fight against Taylor. And Pursoon, oh my God, she fights like someone stole money from her. She is in your face. She is a police officer outside of the ring, and she just as hard, just as rugged, just as determined inside the ring. So whenever that fight happens, if that fight happens, she's going. I'm saying it right now. Baumgartner has not been in the ring with anyone close to the style of Pursoon, and assuming that Pursoon is still the fighter that I know her to be, she is going to give the bomb the fight of her life whenever that happens. Let's move on to a bit of final news here before we start previewing a couple of fights that's going to take place this weekend, Daniel. And that is regarding Teofimo Lopez, WBO champion at 140 pounds. I wrote an article about him on 3kingsboxing.com. And news broke over the past few days that he turned down a fight with one Ryan Garcia. He claims that he was only offered $1.5 million for a fight with Ryan Garcia. Golden Boy is wanting to make a fight between Lopez and Garcia Super Bowl weekend of next year, right, of 2024. If he was only offered $1.5 million to fight Garcia, I get why he turned the fight. But still, Daniel, in my head, something is missing. You and I both know in this fight, in professional boxing, it's the art of negotiations, right? And Teofimo is one to talk. How can I put this without being objective? Freak it. I'm just gonna state what's on my mind. Teofimo at times talk like he's above everybody, right? Like he's the smartest person in the room. You gonna tell me that you get offered that money and there was no follow-up? There was no comeback offer from you? You just say 1.5 and that's it? I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. Your reaction, Daniel? Especially, let me say this. Given the fact that Garcia made $30 million for that loss with Tank, he's a cash cow. You don't just walk away from that kind of fight knowing that you can get the bag. You negotiate up.
Yeah. That's what's interesting to me when I heard this news is probably the lack of Bob getting involved in this, because as far as we know, Bob is still his promoter. And that contract that he had, that Teofimo had Top Rank sign with him, does make him get a pretty boatload of money. But that's hinging on the fact that ESPN still wants to pay that much money for Top Rank fights. That may be up in the air, considering all the moves that's been happening the last few years with HBO and Showtime. That being said, on that level, I can understand Teofimo. If you know that the guy that wants to fight you essentially made almost 30 times as much in losing a fight, you want to make sure that you get a good payday for it, but you have to follow through with it. Because at the end of the day, 140, there's not a lot of attractive fights to make. And like I said, you can't fight Haney now unless you go up to 147. And as interesting as it would be to see him fight Bud at this stage, if I'm Teofimo's camp, I would not put him anywhere near Bud Crawford. So there's not a lot of options for you. You have to make yourself try to be the cash cow, because you're not going to rematch Josh Taylor. You've already proven your point with him. And you're not going to go back down to 135 because it was hard enough for you to make 135 in the current state. So, you go back to negotiating with Teofimo or call Bob. Just eat a humble pie, call Bob, and tell Bob, please call Oscar, see what the most you can make from it, and it won't come out of your pocket. It'll come out of the zone's pocket. That's how he should sell it to Bob in order for him to get this fight with Ryan Garcia, because you're at a point in time right now where you need to have a cash cow made. And if you're, unfortunately said, if you're not going to fly across the Atlantic to get the blood money, then you might as well negotiate. You might as well try to negotiate for as much as you can, not just brush it off. Because in all negotiations, the party that makes the most money, they're going to lowball you at first, and then you work your way up. That's how negotiations work.
And I know he's coming off of the win against Taylor, right? But besides that, in spite of that, is he in position to pull rank at this point?
No. No, he's not. He has to still rebuild his reputation. Not only from the fact that he took George Kambosos not seriously and it wound up costing him those titles at 135, but between this and between his situation at home involving his soon-to-be ex-wife, his son, and unfortunately a parental figure of a father who would rather just be his friend than be his father, it's not a good situation to fall into. It's not a good environment to be around. You got to make what you can in the sport. And if somebody like Ryan Garcia, who's proven to be a draw, if he can offer you something to it, even if it's you go from 1 million to 5, or if you go from 1 million to maybe 10, you at least have to try. Oh, I think we may have lost Mike.
Sorry my bad. I was on mute. My bad. I was on mute. My apologies. I was on mute. During our discussion about Teofimo, we mentioned Ryan Garcia. Well, Garcia is making his return to the ring following the stoppage loss to Gervonta Davis this past April. Going to fight Oscar Duarte. Duarte is a decent guy. The question is, with King Ryan now being under a new trainer, right? The trainer of Spence. Help me out here, Daniel. James, excuse me, Derek James.
Yeah, Derek James. Sorry.
Under the tutelage of Derek James. It's going to be interesting what improvements that he can bring out of Ryan. We all know with Ryan Garcia. Yes, he's tall. Yes, he has size. Yes, he has good hand speed. But the tank fight showed how limited he is, not just from technical ability, but from just overall skill, because he's a guy who relies heavily on the left hook. He's never been a guy who's had a fully developed jab or fully developed right hand or a real fluid combination puncher, in my opinion. I want to see how he looks in this fight. Do you think that James can bring out the best in Garcia? Do you think that we will see an improved fighter this Saturday against Duarte?
We should see some improvement because it is a new trainer, and my rule of thumb has always been you need 3 fights in order to fully engage. This is, I think, the first one. And you're going to see how much of an adjustment he's made, because the jab is probably the most egregious gap in skill that he doesn't have at the moment. And he needs to develop that so he can start setting up that left hook. And if you can't do that, then sorry, folks, you may see the same old Ryan that relies on hand speed, and he might get the knockout. It'll be tough with Duarte. Duarte's not a walk in the park in many ways, but ultimately that has to this. If when it comes to Derek James,
you're going in and out on me, Daniel. Are you still there?
like it hasn't been the good.
I think we have some technical issues with Daniel because you're going in and
those
out
improvements. Yeah, no, I'm still there.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah, but hopefully, we'll see. The first thing I'm looking at when it comes to improvement, it has to be the jab. He needs to develop a jab in order for him to set up the rest of his offense. Because otherwise, we're just going to get the same old Ryan. And if that's the case, why did you switch trainers in the first place?
I mean, in the lead up, he said that he wasn't being a professional. We will see if a more professional style comes out of Ryan in this fight. To your point, not only does he need to develop a jab, I think he needs to develop himself being more of a combination punter, not just relying on the lead or counter left hook. And I also want to see improved defense. Quit fighting so doggone tall. He fights almost in a European style, straight up, erect, not much movement with his head, upper body, not much movement with his legs, comes straight down the center line. Not a real body puncher, a good body puncher, I should say. Create more angles in there. I'm hoping for all of that in at least some of it in the upcoming fight against Duarte. If we see it, he should win and win rather comfortably. If not, I'm still going to have questions afterwards. On the undercard here, Daniel, Ohara Davies fighting Ismael Borroso for interim belt at 140 pounds. Rolly Romero, the full-time champion, is out right now due to injury. Last time we saw Borroso, he was giving Rolly trouble until Rolly ended up stopping him. I thought the stoppage was a bit unfair. I thought Borroso was winning up to the fight, until the fight was stopped. But Borroso, he's up there in age. He's 41, but he looks like he's about 61 when you look at his body against Ohara Davies. Put it this way, I don't know if we'll see that kind of repeat performance for Borroso. As a result, I'm leaning towards Davies here to get the win.
Okay.
I'm gonna be trying to kind. I'm trying to be kind here, folks. It's the holiday season, so we need to be kind in certain ways. And Borroso did fight fairly well. But then when you start thinking about it, that was against Rolly. So that's a tough barometer to gauge to see how much better you were as a fighter considering the competition. Now, Ohara Davies has his own road to come in, but he's the house fighter in this case. Because Golden Boy snatched him up pretty quickly after Eddie kind of left him to the side. So on skill-wise, I'm leaning more towards Ohara Davies. As long as he stays focused, he'll be able to set the traps he can set, land the combinations he needs to land, and if not a knockout, he should be able to get a good, comfortable decision win. But, like I said, if he remains focused. That's been an issue at times with Ohara Davies. And that may be the opening that Borroso may need to land and get a quick upset and get that rematch with Rolly to get his revenge in many ways, because I agree with you that stoppage he had that against Rolly wasn't exactly on the up and up. It wasn't level per se.
Indeed. And I think we're going to end the show on that note. If you like what you've heard and you're checking us out, listening to us on YouTube, again, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Help the overall algorithms get closer to being monetized. I want to thank MG is here for his comments and his questions. I know Gail was not with us this evening. We usually start in the show with ladies first. If you want to talk boxing with Gail, you can do so on social media, on Twitter and IG, PR Pro San Diego. That's her handle on IG and Twitter. You can also check out her work on nyfights.com. I'll go to you, Daniel, for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk pro wrestling, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially all things Miami Heat. Let the folks know where they can find you.
The handles are all the same, folks, whether it's on Twitter, It's on Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, Mastodon, Rux99, RAWKUZ99. All the handles are the same. Definitely catch there, because we can say anything to say that the past week has been interesting on all fronts when it comes to the sports. Like I said, we have this gigantic card. Granted, it's fueled by blood money, but it's serving its purpose. And hell froze over in WWE, apparently.
CM Punk is back.
Yeah, and I'll just say this in a way when it comes to that situation. I have not seen Dana White take this big of an L since he sent Chuck Liddell to get knocked out by Rampage Jackson in Pride. I'll just say that.
And for those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, you know what it is with me on Twitter, Brother JR, at Brother JR76, for those who want to talk boxing, music, and more importantly, fragrances, all things cologne and all things fragrances. To my fellow frag heads and cologne lovers, you can do so on IG and Twitter, Brother JR, and check out my scent of the days. And I'm getting ready to post my scent of the day for this particular day, November 29th. I'm late doing so right now, but you can check out all things cologne, fragrance related with me on IG, Twitter, Brother JRSC. On the next episode of Pound for Pound Boxing Report, hopefully we will be back next week. We will do a recap of Garcia and Duarte, do a recap of Ohara Davies and Ismael Borroso. That fight is for the vacant WBA interim belt at 140 pounds. Floyd Schofield, rising lightweight prospect. He's going to be on that same card as well. And didn't talk about it here, but Michael Conlan is making his return to the ring in his hometown of Northern Ireland. He's fighting a guy by the name of Jordan Hill. And we will do a preview of fights that's happening on December the 9th. Robeisy Ramirez, who the more I see him, the more I'm understanding why he was so highly praised when he came into the pro ranks. He's defending his WBO 126-pound belt against Rafael Espinoza. Xander Zarias makes his return to the ring, fighting a guy by the name of Fortia, 10-round junior middleweight contest. Bruce Shushu Carrington, a guy that I like a lot. Again, check out 3kingsboxing.com. Did a prospect watch profile on him over there. He's fighting on this card as well. Another couple other prospects, Delonte Johnson, Jahi Tucker. All of those fights are going to be held on ESPN in Pembroke, Hines, Florida. And last but certainly not least, we're going to do a preview of the fight between Prograis and Haney. It's finally happening on December the 9th. Ebony Bridges is defending her IBF 118-pound title on that card. And Liam Paro, who I still feel beat Teofimo when they fought December last year. He returns to the ring to fight Montana Love. That's happening on the 9th in San Francisco on DAZN. On the 10th of December in England, Chris Billum-Smith making the first defense of his WBO cruiserweight title as he's fighting Matus Masternak. So we'll talk about all those bouts. Fingers crossed we will be back next week. So hopefully we will have Gail back next week as well. So for Daniel of For Boxing News and the Inscriber, again, thank you for MG for his comments and his questions. I'm your host, Michael. This has been episode 426 of the Pound for Pound Box Report. Hoping everyone had an excellent Thanksgiving. See you guys next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.